Hi guys! Today we're doing the Suicide Squad Katana inspired doll repaint. I already made her swords in my previous video, so be sure to check that out if you want to see how to make those. For this project I used this made to move Barbie, the one with the purple top since her hair color matched, and most importantly she had a closed mouth smile since the regular open mouth smile would look really off on the character. Before I started the actual repaint, I made the mask, and this is simply because I don't want to add any strain to the new face. Firstly, I placed a piece of baking paper on top of the doll's face so I can sketch around the basic shape of the mask. Then I took a piece of very thick sketchbook paper and I crinkled it up to make it look old and kind of messy since I want the mask to look that way because it is slightly crinkled. And then I traced the shape of the mask onto it and cut it out. To give the mask the proper shape, I dip it in water and then place this on top of the doll's face and let it dry that way. After it was all dry, I used some black pastel, colored pencils and some red paint to add the details to the mask. When I was happy with my mask, I sealed it in with some hairspray to keep it from smudging, and then I added some shiny glaze to the red part. Next I fixed her hair. The doll already has a side part like the character, but the doll's part was way too much to the side, so I moved it in a little. To make the new part, you separate the hair and then you take small strands from each side and kind of crisscross them over each other to hide the scalp. To set the new part in place, I had rubber bands around the head to keep the hair down, and then I pour hot water on top and let it dry, which will then set it all in. Once the hair was dry, I moved on to the actual repainting, starting by removing the face with some acetone. Then I primed the doll with 3 thin coats of Mr. Super Clear. I used the same spray to set whatever progress I'm making and also to seal the completed repaint. To do the repaint, I used some chalk pastels for shading and then my watercolor pencils, using them both dry and wet. The face sculpt of this doll is smiling slightly, so we're gonna try to compensate that and make it look as if she's just more neutral, since it's not really part of the character to smile, she doesn't look happy. When doing character repaints, I always find myself some reference pictures so I know where to go. If you wanted to wear the mask always, then you won't need to do the eyebrows. I did them simply because I didn't want the doll to look weird throughout the repaint, so. I shaded her pretty heavily around the eyes, which made her look quite haunting, but once she wears the mask, this is how it's supposed to look. Once you're happy with the face, seal it in with a spray and let it dry. Then add the mask. I glued mine in place, but you can use string to tie it on. Then I placed her head on a stand to make it easier to handle when I cut the hair. And that's their head ready. For the body, I also primed it with a spray of Mr. Super Clear, and then I used my watercolor pencils to draw on the scars and a bit of acrylic paint to paint on the gloves. Once you're done with the body, seal it with the coat of the spray again. For her boots, I went pretty simple. I cut out the soles from some cardstock, then I used some wannabe leather fabric for the actual pieces. If you want to see more on how to make doll shoes, I have a whole playlist of that on my channel. And there's the boots. The original doll was wearing some okay leggings, which we can use for the pants. I just took some, again, fake leather fabric and cut out some patches for the knees and used some acrylic paint and alcohol ink to paint on the details. I feel I must point out that I do not read or really speak Japanese, so what I'm doing here is just trying to imitate what I could see on the pictures, so if I'm misspelling something, please bear with me. I use some fabric glue to glue those patches onto the pants, and then a small pair of scissors to make the rips. To imitate the zippers on the pockets, I use some silver alcohol ink. And that's the pants. We'll be adding the belt and the sword later. To start the jacket, I placed the doll on a piece of paper so I could start sketching up my pattern pieces. If you haven't made stuff like this before, it's a good thing to look up actual real size patterns, because this will give you an idea of the shapes you need to make. Once you got your pattern cut out, you're gonna choose your fabric. I used this shiny black satin, and then cut out your pattern pieces. Remember to always leave room to sew. Firstly, I folded up the bottom edge and then used my hot iron to flatten it before sewing across to make it look neat. Do the same to the neckline. Do the same to the 2 front pieces of the pattern. Then sew the 2 front pieces to the back piece by the shoulders. If you have issues with any of the cut edges fraying, simply use a thin fabric glue to set them. Next, attach the 2 sleeve pieces. Then sew down along the sleeves and down the side of the jacket. Turn it inside out, and that's the basic jacket. Next, I took this wide black ribbon, cut it into smaller pieces, and then use it for trim around the top edge of the neckline, down the bottom of the jacket, and also next to what would have been the zipper. After that, I used the gold alcohol ink again to paint on the details of the jacket. For the back, I've made it very simple, though there seemed to be some writing except for this kind of fan shape. But I couldn't really make out the shapes of them, so I didn't want to try to make signs and stuff that would just be gibberish because I couldn't really tell. So I made simple for the back. I made 2 patches for the elbows the same way I did for the knees. For the armband, I used a piece of white fabric and acrylic paint to make a very simple version. Her actual top just seemed to be bandage, so I just cut a really long strip of white fabric and wrapped it around the doll. To finish off the jacket, we're going to use this red ribbon, which we're going to wrap around the arms and tie in a bow in the back, like she has in the movie. Finally, we're gonna make the swords that we made in the previous video, again using the red ribbon to wrap them into the belt. And there we are! A Katana inspired repaint is done. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to hit the like button if you did, because it really helps me out. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!